Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Today is Monday, December 30th, and this is the last Whiparound before the new year, and we got a special one today. Steve Wiltfong, he's down in Orlando, Florida on assignment. He's at the Under Armour game covering all the action down there, so we're going to have a lot of recruiting buzz on today's show, so let's get to it. But before we do, guys, make sure you're subscribed. If you watched one of our episodes of the Wiltfong Whiparound in the year of 2024, then do me a favor and hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring on the best recruiting insider in the country, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, we're going to hit on some of the Under Armour intel in a minute, but first, we got a couple loose ends from the 2025 cycle that we still got to tie up. And we'll start with five-star offensive tackle Ty Haywood, 6'5", 300 pounds, the number 5 ranked offensive tackle in America. He declined to sign with Alabama, still committed to Alabama, but what is the latest intel on Ty Haywood as we head into the new year?
Well, we still expect the Denton Ryan product to sign with another program outside of Alabama, and there's a few contenders. We know Michigan has been in the thick of this one, and we're expecting the Wolverines to get Ty Haywood on campus for an official visit in January. Head coach Sharon Moore leading the charge in recruiting Ty Haywood to the Wolverines. Obviously, Sharon Moore has that offensive line background. Very important to that football program, the culture, the style of play. They're making a big push for Ty Haywood. So is Texas Tech. We talked a little bit about that before the holiday, Josh. Texas Tech, they have the number 1 transfer portal class in the country right now per the On3 industry. They signed a top 25 class last year for the On3 recruiting rankings, number 23. They sit at number 39 right now, but my point is we've seen recruiting chops by Joey McGuire, James Blanchard, and that coaching staff. And they're right there in the thick of it for Ty Haywood down the stretch. A lot of their recruitment is home cooking, in-state success. Ty Haywood, they would love to add to that group. And then Florida State. You're going to hear Florida State a lot early in the Wiltfong Whiparound today, because if you did not sign a letter of intent, Mike Norvell and the Seminoles are trying to recruit you if you can play. They've been involved with Ty Haywood for a long time. Yeah. Obviously, the new coaches on staff for him to get to know, particularly on the offensive line. But Florida State is also swinging at Ty Haywood. Could other schools pop up for him? Nothing would surprise me. But we know Michigan, Texas Tech, and Florida State are active for the Alabama commit.
And is there any chance that we could see Ty Haywood back at Alabama, or are you considering that? Are you putting a fork in that recruitment?
All the intel to date in Bama Online was first to report it, but we are not expecting him to end up at Alabama's class. The Crimson Tide did sign a very talented offensive line class, headlined by the top interior offensive lineman in the country, Michael Carroll. They went out to California and landed one of the top offensive tackles in the country, Jackson Lloyd. Micah DeBose is competing here at the Under Armour game this week in Florida. Mal Wildrep, in-state recruit. So I think Alabama's done on the offensive front this cycle. And Ty Haywood, Michigan, Texas Tech, Florida State, some of the schools involved moving forward. He'll take some officials in January, put that pen to paper in February, first Wednesday in February on the traditional, but now late signing day.
Yeah, it will be real interesting with Ty Haywood. No, he made a visit to Florida State in the summer. I don't think he's been back since then. And then you got Michigan and Texas Tech, so it's only going to get hotter for the only 5-star offensive lineman still left on the market. So we'll have to follow that one. All right, moving on to the Florida Gators. They are not done flipping. Since early signing day, they've already flipped Dallas Wilson from Oregon. He is now signed and heading to Gainesville, but they might not be done. Onis Konanbaney, he did not sign with Tennessee. He is committed to Tennessee, but did not sign during the early period. Steve, could this be another flip for the Gators?
I like the way it's trending for Florida right now. They were the school that really heated up at the end in December there. I'm expecting him back in Gainesville for another visit where he'll shadow a player, get back around Coach Napier, Coach Will Harris, and the staff. Several sources around the program feel terrific about the Gators' position for Onis Konambani at this point in his process. Florida State's also trying to make a run at Konambani, try and make things interesting down the stretch. But right now, the intel favors the Gators to add him to their class.
All right. Do you think he takes visits in January? And is Tennessee going to try to get him back to Knoxville for one?
Well, again, we're expecting him back at Florida to do that shadow with the player, get that day in the life with the Gators. Florida has the number 11 class in the country right now. It was a whole fast flurry to the early signing period. They obviously got the news after the early signing period. Dallas Wilson had signed with Oregon, ultimately ends up in Florida's class. That was a wild one too, Josh, with Dallas Wilson, talking to a source the morning of around Gainesville that said he's going to stay in state. It's going to be Florida or Miami. Then talking to a source around Miami that says, well, we don't feel good about it. We feel good about Florida. Then talking to a source around Eugene that says Dallas Wilson was great on Tuesday night, said he's sticking. Then he wakes up on Wednesday morning, tells Dan Lanning that he's thinking about Florida. Dan Lanning holds that off. They get Dallas Wilson to sign with the program he had been committed to for 2 years. He signs with Oregon. And then somehow in between that and December 22nd, the second thoughts continued again. Oregon releases him from his letter of intent, and he is signed with Florida in part of that Gators class, a terrific receiver haul, him and Vernell Brown III. Vernell Brown III is here at Under Armour. Dallas Wilson was supposed to be here, didn't make it into town yesterday, one of the scratches. Saw linebacker commit Ty Jackson here, so big Florida presence. Jalen Wiggins here at the Under Armour game. Could Onis Konambani be the next to join the fold? I think it's trending that way.
I think so as well. Gators not done flipping just yet. All right, let's talk about edge Zahir Mathis. Now, he decommitted from Ohio State during the season, and now news coming out that he's locking in 4 visits. Steve, tell us more.
Well, that 4 visits is already down to 3. He checked in at the Under Armour All-America game yesterday, talked with Chad Simmons. Florida State, UCLA, and Michigan are contenders for Zahir Mathis at the end of his process. A former Ohio State commit. Penn State got him on campus during the fall. The Nittany Lions are another program to keep an eye on for Zahir Mathis moving forward. But as far as future visits go, he's trying to get to UCLA, trying to get to Florida State, and trying to get to Michigan. I think you keep an eye on the Seminoles right now. We'll see what kind of push the Bruins make. Michigan's certainly a dark horse. And then Penn State, if they ratchet it up down the stretch, I could see them keeping him in state. Still a very fluid recruitment. Even the dates for these upcoming visits are not completely ironed out just yet for Zahir Mathis.
All right, another one to keep an eye on. Now let's get to some of your new predictions. 4-star wide receiver Donovan Murph, he's set to announce on January 2nd, so we're only a few days away. What's the latest on Murph?
Yeah, he's going to commit at the Under Armour All-America game. Clemson and South Carolina got several visits during the fall. I like where the Gamecocks stand going into his announcement. Think he'll join a class that sits at number 19 nationally.
All right, another 4-star linebacker, McKay Madsen. He'll be making his announcement. This one will be coming at the Navy All-American Bowl in San Antonio on January 11th. Steve, where do you think he's going?
Oregon. He was at Oregon's win over Ohio State, returned for his official visit in December. He's put a keen eye on BYU. There was a time where I thought UCLA led coming into the season, but those visits to Oregon, seeing that atmosphere in Eugene, time spent with his mom on campus, getting back for his official visit. I like where Oregon stands for McKay Madsen. He earned his offer in camp. He's going to take a mission. So he is more of a 2026 or 2027 recruit for Oregon. But ultimately, I like where the Ducks stand for one of the best second-level defenders out west.
All right, let's talk about that Under Armour game in Orlando. Now, in a new twist, this is kind of cool. Some of the top high school juniors are going to play alongside some of the seniors. I think it's just a sign of the times, but Under Armour All-American game is making some changes, and a few of the big names include Jackson Cantwell, Zion Elee, Tristan Keys, just to name a few. So in this video, me and Steve are going to get to the latest recruiting buzz on some of the elite 2026 prospects that are participating in that Under Armour game this year. So, Steve, let's start with Jackson Cantwell. He's the industry's #1 ranked recruit, big ol' offensive tackle from Missouri, and he's already been on a ton of visits. Do you got a feel for who's really in it with him?
Well, he said he's still talking to about 10 schools right now, and he's looking to narrow it down to 4 going into the summer and official visits of trying to make his college decision. He said the problem is all these schools do a great job recruiting him. I think we can obviously point to some schools that we think are in the thick of it. I think you start that list with Missouri. He's a legacy recruit. His father's in the Missouri Athletics Hall of Fame, a professional shot putter, world champion in the shot put, also a silver medalist in the shot put at the Olympics. He said he spent the first 8 years of his life on Mizzou's campus, and he talked about the huge emphasis Coach Drinkwitz has on keeping in-state guys home. When you're the number one player in the country, you're going to have tremendous NIL opportunities. We've seen Missouri win some of those NIL recruitments over the last couple of years under Coach Drinkwitz and his staff. So Mizzou's in the thick of that one. He attended a game at Missouri this year, likes the development of the offensive line, says they're always ranked in the top 25 under Coach Drinkwitz. So he likes where the program's at. Alabama and Georgia are 2 schools that he's been high on for a lot of his process. He's been there multiple times, including games in the season for Alabama. He talked about Kalen DeBoer and his track record of winning on the Division III level, the FCS level, and the Power 5 level. Just the tradition at Alabama. Coach Kapilovic, the offensive line coach at Alabama, going to Missouri State, being 20 minutes away from Nixa High, where he's from. They have that cool connection, and the history and track record of Alabama all stand out to him. Coach Searles, the offensive line coach at Georgia, is one of his favorite offensive line coaches. He's been there a few times, including a game this fall. Loves that they're in the championship conversation every year. Loves their attention to detail, says they do things the right way, just loves their process about everything. Miami got a visit this fall. He had a great time there, loves the emphasis on the offensive line position with the Hurricanes program, called Coach Mirabal a top 5 offensive line coach, loves the impact that Coach Cristobal has on the offensive line. Nebraska got a game visit during the fall. He says they got their quarterback in Dylan Raiola. They want to build around it with guys like him. He's excited to see them continue the upward trajectory. Talked about them winning their first bowl game in 2015, trying to restore blue blood status. But Oregon is a program that I have a keen eye on for Jackson Cantwell. He's one of the top shot put throwers in the nation. He talks to Dan Lanning as much as any head coach. Dan Lanning's from Kansas City, Missouri. They already have a great connection. He said that Dan Lanning is one of the he said he's a great dude and said that he's one of the more relatable head football coaches in the country, one of the more likable head football coaches in the country. Just obviously the way Oregon's playing. Now, he called them the national championship favorites and then said, I don't want to jinx Coach Lanning. But he's trying to get back to Oregon. He visited them in the summer. Ohio State, Michigan got recent visits. He loves the style of play in the Big Ten. Said he learned a lot from Grant Newsome, Michigan's offensive line coach. Enjoyed touring Ohio State, seeing what the Buckeyes are all about. Again, they got a track record like Georgia. So those are the contenders. A lot of schools still in play for Jackson Cantwell. He's building meaningful relationships with them. A lot of moving parts there. He's going to visit Texas A&M in January. That's going to be his first visit of the new year. So they're another program that he's invested a lot of time with, talking to Elko and Coach Cushing. So can't narrow it down to one. There was a time where I would have said Georgia was the favorite. But now, I mean, I could see him going to several of these schools, and Oregon is a school that I think is in an interesting spot.
You think we're looking at maybe a summer decision for Cantwell?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because he's already been able to make several rounds of visits. He's not trying to narrow it down to the officials. He's got as strong a representation as you can have with the Rosenhaus firm representing him. So they're going to be buttoned up from an NIL standpoint. I mean, obviously, he's going to have over $1 million opportunities from these programs. But for him, connections with the coaching staff, track record of development, being around like-minded guys in the offensive line room. I mean, he's the son of athletes. His mom is a Hall of Fame athlete at SMU. His dad's a Hall of Fame athlete at Missouri. He wants to have a great college experience, wants to have fun with the guys, wants to be the best version of himself, wants to play in big games. And then he hired the Rosenhaus group to handle all the business side of it. And his dad was watching an episode of Hard Knocks, saw the Rosenhaus group on there. So we got the right guys. They're like, we got the right guys. So they're good to go. Some schools have already put out there the value that they think he has. Certainly that value will change as they go head to head. And then the other schools are just saying, we'll match whatever. So he's just trying to find out where he's comfortable right now. And then those other details will take care of itself.
Yeah. All right. Well, you got a big article on Cantwell on the front page of on3.com right now. You guys go check it out. But you're the real recruiting expert. So let us know where you think Jackson Cantwell ends up. Comment section below. Steve, let's stay on the offensive line. I want to talk a little bit about Immanuel Iheanacho, the big 6'6", 350-pound offensive tackle. Sounds like, based on your reporting, he has a new number one.
It's Oregon, the Oregon Ducks, man. And I'm telling you, when you're talking about Oregon, people always are quick to say, Phil Knight, the blank checks, yada, yada, yada. Look, Oregon's obviously invested in an NIL standpoint, but Iheanacho doesn't even have his agent lined up yet. So those conversations, if he's having any NIL conversations, it's very early in that process. He loves Oregon for the reasons of they're playing at a high level. They're the number one team in the country. So the proof is in the pudding on the field. Second, there isn't a coaching staff that does a better job of building meaningful relationships from the head coach to the position coach. Maybe there's a couple that match it, but then when you compound that they're the number one team in the country, no one is putting that out there right now. Dan Lanning is in the middle of all their premier recruiting battles. I talked to Naeem Alford, who flipped from Ohio State to Oregon on the last day of the process, also strongly considered Auburn. He's here at the Under Armour All-America game, and he said Oregon was his best relationship. So it starts with Dan Lanning, then it goes, in this case, with Iheanacho, Elee Terry. So the offensive line coach did a great job. So people just love the vibe around Oregon, the way they pour into their athletes. So it was Georgia. Oregon's the leader now. Georgia's a close second, so the Bulldogs still very much in it for Manny as well. Penn State, Phil Trotwine's one of his best relationships. He's been up to nearby Penn State several times, loves their pedigree, track record of development, play style. Penn State's in the top three. Maryland, they already won out for Zion Elee. On3's number one ranked player in the country. Manny has visited Maryland recently. They're in the middle of that one. Do they have some more magic in their plans in this 2026 recruiting cycle? But the first schools that I mentioned for him would be Oregon, Georgia, then Penn State. And then Texas A&M's a program he's going to try and visit here in the new year as well.
Wow. When do you think Iheanacho could be ready to make a decision?
Well, I think all these guys are going to try and come off the board before the start of their senior seasons. Again, he has been able to take several visits. He's going to take some visits in the spring. He's going to take some official visits in the summer. By then, he'll have his representation for NIL, so he'll be able to get all of that buttoned up. And look, when these prospects, the offers that they're going to get from these collectives and their opportunities, they want to get this all buttoned up and done going into the season as well, so they can then start working on their current roster retention, who's getting raises there and all that. So for these 5-star recruitments, it's setting up for most of them to be done by the summer.
All right. Well, Zion Elee, his recruitment's done. He's On3's number one overall player. Now, he's the industry's number 3 player. That's the industry ranking. He's number 3. On3's number 1. Got it. Committed to Maryland, Steve. Says he's locked in. Said it at the Under Armour check-in. So that means his recruitment's done, right?
Yeah, of course. No, he has not talked to any other program since he's committed to Maryland, but you and I have been following recruiting for 2 decades. He's planning on taking some other official visits, so schools are going to get a chance to change his mind. He loves the opportunity at Maryland to play locally for some coaches that he loves, leaves that legacy that other guys have done in the past. But Oregon, that was a program that led at one point for Zion Elee. He's going to go back for an official visit. Penn State, the way they developed their edge rushers, Abdul Carter being the latest, that's a program that's in the middle of it for him. Tennessee, Miami, Texas A&M, these are all programs that are going to continue swinging at Zion Elee moving forward. But he is a firm commitment to Maryland, says he has not talked to any other programs since giving the Terrapins a surprising commit. He said his commitment surprised Mike Loxley. I mean, but he had been thinking about it, he said, for a few weeks beforehand. The Under Armour connections to the school. He talked about Kevin Plank, Maryland, and again, the local legacy is his family and friends being able to come see him. He's excited about his future at Maryland, but you only get to go through this process once. You dot I's, you cross T's. He's going to take some visits. And Oregon is a program that at one point I thought was the leader. So obviously you look at that trip, a return trip out there, can they flip that back to them, or can Penn State make a run down the stretch and get him in the fold?
Yeah. You guys talk to us.
Point to a guy like Chop Robinson, obviously, be like, he started at Maryland, wrapped up at Penn State. Now he's in the league.
Yeah, you guys talk to us in the comments section below. Zahir Elee, On3's #1 recruit, is committed to Maryland. Says he's locked in. How do you guys feel about this, Steve? I kind of feel like this reminds me of the Keelan Russell recruitment, a top recruit in his home city, putting on, committing. And, I've known Mike Locksley for 15 years. I think he's great. I know what a great recruiter he can be. I just feel like Zahir Elee committed to Maryland for a year. It's going to be a long haul to hold him. So you guys let us know what you think. Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's talk a little Michigan recruiting. They are sitting pretty for a pair of top running backs. We'll start with Savion Hyder, the #1 running back in America. He's from Virginia. You spoke to him. What's he saying about Michigan?
Well, he's been there multiple times, including a game visit this fall. His relationship with Tony Alford is second to none. It started when Tony, the running backs coach, was at Ohio State. Smooth transition over to Michigan. Loves being around Sharon Moore in that staff. Feels like he fits in at Michigan on and off the field, and thinks Michigan's going to quickly bounce back and be a national championship for him sooner rather than later. But there are other contenders. I mean, he loves Georgia. Took 2 game visits to Georgia this fall, called them RBU. Also visited there in the offseason. So loves what he's seen from Georgia. Wanted to get back around Kirby Smart and company on that coaching staff. Tennessee is a program that he made it back for a game visit, got to get to know Coach Heupel better, loves Coach Sims there. So Tennessee's in the middle of that one for Savion Hyder. Then Ohio State rounding out the top 4. Again, Tony Alford got that recruitment started for the Buckeyes, but Carlos Lachlan took that baton and is running with it. He also pointed to Ohio State as being an RBU. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, Ezekiel Elliott were some of the running backs he mentioned regarding Ohio State. So those 4 programs are all in it. He's going to take official visits, but it's Michigan setting the pace going into the new year for Savion Hyder.
Now, the Wolverines, they're going to get greedy at the position. They're also in great shape with Javian Osborne, the #6 running back from Texas. What's he saying at check-in?
Well, it's such their identity to their program, right? They want to run the football. They want to impose their will on the teams they're playing against. And that's what they did on their way to a national championship against a terrific Penn State team a couple of years ago. They didn't even throw a pass in the second half and pulling away from the Nittany Lions. So this is a program that prides itself on being able to run the ball, and they want to sign the best running backs in the country. 2026 is an important year for them to reload their running back room. And Javian Osborne, talked to him at Under Armour check-in, and Michigan has the edge in his recruitment right now. Again, like Savion Hyder, he's considering several schools. Texas is right there in the thick of it for him. He may be back in Austin for Texas's junior day after visiting a couple times during the fall. He may also go to Notre Dame. It's the same weekend. The Irish are enticing to him. He loves Dylan McCullough and his pro background as a coach and some of the guys he's developed as a position coach on the college level. Florida State, Alabama are a couple other programs that have also caught his eye. But Michigan setting the pace for these running backs. They just now have to get it to the finish line. We've seen teams lead and not sign them. And these recruitments are fluid, but Michigan doing all the right things for Savion Hyder and Javian Osborne right now.
Yeah, Michigan looking to stock up on those running backs. Some more intel. Wide receiver Tristan Keys, #2 ranked wide receiver, really the top uncommitted because Chris Henry Jr., the #1, is committed. Now, he's 6'2", 185 pounds from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, another 5-star wide receiver out of Mississippi. What's the latest on Tristan Keys?
Well, Tennessee and Texas A&M are the 2 early front runners, in my opinion. Then you have Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, USC, some of the others he spoke highly of.
All right. Now let's move on to another running back, the #2 ranked back in the 2026 class, Derek Cooper. Now, somebody has reached out to me about him potentially committing on this channel, not in the near future, but down the road. So Derek Cooper, who's buzzing around him?
Well, Miami and Georgia are 2 that are in outstanding shape for Derek Cooper, local Hurricanes target that loves the renaissance, the rebuilding of this program. Has pointed to that numerous times, saying, hey, I've heard from the elders around me about Miami being good. Now I'm finally seeing it for myself. And then Georgia, just their track record as a program in general. And then Ohio State, I'd probably put them in the 3-hole right now for Derek Cooper. He's got a lot of suitors, though, but those are 3 that I know he's got a keen eye on.
All right, last name we got to hit on is the number 2 ranked tight end. Number 1 tight end is already off the board to Oregon, so all focus turns to Caden Prothro. Who's trending with him?
Well, Georgia's setting the bar after some recent visits, including he was there for one of their playoff practices right after he helped his high school team win a state championship. But Miami's doing a really good job recruiting him. He likes Florida, talked about Kyle Pitts and some of the guys that have come out of the Gators program. Alabama's given him a lot to think about, and he really wants to visit Texas. He's having good dialogue with the Longhorns. He's excited to get out to Austin and see what the Burnt Orange are all about. And we just saw Texas come into the Peach State and rip Justice Terry away from Georgia. They'll try and do it again with Caden Prothro. That'll do it for today's episode of the Wiltfong Whiparound. Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in throughout the course of 2024. I'm very excited to be here at On3. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel for the best and most up-to-date recruiting information from the Wiltfong Whiparound to the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg, live commitments, and so much more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Wiltfong Whiparound.